Welcome to the Imperfect Dads podcast.
I'm Justin.
And I'm Devin.
We believe dads care deeply about their family and kids,
but they don't always have a space to discuss what their life looks like.
Our podcast is a space for dads to discuss the ups and downs of fatherhood.
And how they feel like they're holding it all together.
Or how they're not.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. On this episode, we have Steve from Surfin' Bird Hot Chicken. We talked about our shared love of comedians, being over the top for the sake of humor, how he started his hot chicken seasoning business, and he tells some stories about getting divorced, his ex-wife passing away, getting remarried, and the joy and happiness he is finding in building a new life with his wife and daughter. And also just like one more thing.
Dad, just start the episode.
Oh, my bad.
I've thought about whether or not to make a podcast up of all Steves and just talk about Steve things that are and produced by Steves. If you know other Steves, let me know and we'll make this happen. I've dabbled in stand up, so
I have to tell you this that so my name is Devin with an O, which is normally pronounced Devon whenever I go in somewhere. So whenever I call into a restaurant to place a food order or say what my name is, I usually say Steve. Because no one ever gets Devin correct. It's Devin with an I. Everything is wrong about it. I called in once to be like, hey, here's my order. And I used the name Devin. And the person on the phone just said, what?
Yeah.
And I was like, it's my name.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to tell you. So
have you found, and this is a thing that I have with being a Steve, I feel like there's no bad Steves. I mean, maybe it's a psychology thing for me that, you know, I tell myself for ego.
Self-projection?
Yeah, but I feel like there's like Stephen King is about as wonky as we kind of get in terms of like it could have went real south. You know, he could have been like some, you know, actual serial killer. Yeah. Maybe there's a serial killer named Steve.
I mean, what about Steven Seagal? I feel like but Steven Seagal is also greatly entertaining at the same time.
Yeah, he kind of turned a little heel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like a WWE term. I also like
he's like a comical. He's comically villainous.
Yeah. Speaking of, again, Austin 316, Steve, I like to celebrate. There's a group of holidays, St. Patrick's Day, Austin 316 Day. I find that there's like a succession of holidays that I really feel like we as a culture are missing out on, that we all need to celebrate. Like, I think it's a 4 or 5 day stretch. I'm not sure, maybe Arbor Days within there too, but.
I think on 316 Day, Stone Cold Steve Austin Day, you would have to shotgun a beer in honor of that day. Is that correct?
I mean, that's obviously protocol. I've actually dressed up as a stoned Cold Steve Austin. And I would, for Halloween, and I would just get stoned, and I would dress as a mix between the Big Lebowski and Stone Cold Steve Austin. So I'd walk around D's, if you're familiar with D's out here in Nashville, and I would dress in Austin, you know, being bald, and kind of would cut my goatee down and wear a knee brace, you know, full character as much as I can, have a robe, and just drink Caucasians the whole night.
Yeah, and then just stunner people the entire time. Anyone who came up and got within reach.
There's actually a few people that won pictures, you know, just that way we can kind of recreate. It was fun. Everyone had a great time.
Yes, I can't wait until like my kids get old. And if I have 3 kids, I have a 9-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And whenever they're old enough to try to show them some of the like stoner movies that I grew up on, that I know they will not have any concept of, like all the Billy Madison or all the Adam Sandler movies. And like the Big Lebowski, I feel like I'm going to try to show that to them, and they'll just look at me and be like, "So this is why you are who you are." This explains everything.
This adds up of, you know, how this has come together.
How you became this.
Yeah, I mean, I think mainly for mine, it's Conan O'Brien. You know, kind of just wonky, silly individual, always doing
weird.
It's fun because I've watched a lot of interviews now with him and his his assistant, and they kind of talk about like he's always just doing a different character, and I'm always just like making another voice, and I'm me. But sometimes it's more fun to just like play a different me. So it's like I'll do different little wonky voices here in the house, here and there.
Yeah. My favorite Conan bit, or the one, whenever I think of a classic Conan bit, the one that comes to mind the most is whenever there's a guy who's about to be like, he's in full pads and there's the attack dog. And they're like, is this going to be okay? And they're like, yeah, the dog only attacks the pads and everything's okay. And then they like go like, oh my God, he's got a gun. And then it pans over to the dog and he's got a gun and shoots the guy in full pads. And that's the entire bit.
Yeah.
And then it just fades to black. And I'm like, it's so like, I love Conan O'Brien and Stephen Colbert because whenever they do a bit, they go full in on the bit, and there's no other reality besides the bit in that moment.
And I'm glad you brought up another Stephen. And I was
Yes.
going to say, in terms of like with Stephen Colbert, I found like, it's one of those things like obviously maybe maturing more past and kind of being more of a stalwart and kind of interviews. But I feel like he's kind of fallen away from a lot of that, sort of
Yes.
zaniness, which, I feel like I would hope that he would kind of try to take up that helm going forward. I think his, embodiment of Stephen Colbert, the Stephen Colbert Show for the longest time was kind of, of playing somebody so astutely, for that long of a time, and kind of building into a character. It's almost like I don't know if it's a character study or you just went under some, psychosis, was it the one where they,
He's like a CIA,
trance. Yeah.
He's like a CIA agent, you know, like where he was in like put into like, I know I've listened to an interview with him once in which whenever he was the Colbert Report, that he would get out of like the car, something like that, and walk inside, and his wife would be like, "You're still in character. Get out and come back in. Like that's not my husband. Get out, come back in."
Oh yeah.
And that seems very fun to me. Whenever Paramount Plus started to exist or whatever it's called now, I went back and rewatched a lot of Strangers with Candy, and it's just so dumb. It's so over the top. It's just him, Amy Sedaris, and Paul Dinopoulos or some very Greek last name. And it is as extreme, stupid comedy as you possibly can have. And everyone's all in on every single bit. It's perfect.
Well, I mean, Airplane, stuff like, again, it's one of those things that like, I feel like, I like to assume that I'm well educated. I have my MBA, but at the same point, like slapstick is, what my grandparents even introduced me to with Airplane, growing up as a kid, or George Carlin. I've had an odd upbringing to kind of lead me to here, but in terms of like, having some of those like, a very, intensely intellectual George Carlin, but then Airplane, or John Candy, and that heartfelt, sort of element to it too, where it's, I could watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles on repeat and be happy. Those aren't pillows.
No, they aren't pillows. No, I feel like, because I grew up on a lot of George Carlin and Simpsons and Conan O'Brien, and I feel like I am such a, like, try to be funny and make humor out of everything, because like George Carlin in his later years was very, 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 very dark. And very like, I don't see, like, he did not see a lot of light and commented on that constantly. So I feel like my mind either goes to like extreme darkness or lightheartedness, and I'm not good at middle gears. So yeah, sometimes I'm all in on George Carlin, and other times I'm like, let's just watch something slapstick and stupid. Let's do this.
Well, and I think Carlin had something that, like, my wife and I watched this where, with the not podcast, everything's podcast now.
Yeah, you're good.
Here I am. But he had a documentary on HBO, and it's like, I don't like people, but I like the person, something to that effect, where it's, in terms of like, society and people, but, again, us communicating one-on-one, it's, one of those things when you put people into these groups and they identify, and versus, trying to say, but we may be on different sides, but as people, we can talk together. I think that's always something that like is so missing in society in ways, but it's like, it's ways that he approached subjects that, like, again, to your point, was dark, but, it was a way to almost shock the system and shake us from, believing what everybody is told.
Yeah, I think, I remember, I forget how many years ago it was now, Malcolm Gladwell was on The Daily Show, and he was talking about how, like, if you looked at, like, if, like, you take personalities and make them like a Venn diagram, basically, and, like, everyone, I think, has an intersection of a Venn diagram of stuff they agree on. But if you break, like, it into a pie chart, we usually focus on, like, 10 to 15% of our personality and let it dominate all of our actions, basically. So you walk into a room and you're like, I believe in this, and if you believe in anything else, you're not worth talking to. And it's like, you're ignoring every other aspect of the person's existence because of one thing. And some things you should draw a line in the sand and be like, I'm not budging on this. But I feel like if I'm meeting someone new and I start with like, I'm not going to like you, then I feel disconnected and lonely afterwards. I'm like, well, yeah, man, what did you think was going to happen here?
Yeah. Well, I think that's, again, I think why a lot of people gravitate towards, like an Anthony Bourdain of that, like, being a stranger in someone else's home, but like still saying thank you for, and kind of being, cordial and kind of respectful to, others' beliefs. It may not be something that he believed in when he's in any of these various different countries, but still kind of maintaining that, we all have the dignity to kind of, gather in a place and still, break bread and have, have good conversation.
Yeah. definitely. I can never guarantee if someone will be curious about my life, but I do feel a responsibility to be curious about how someone else lives their life.
Yes.
And take the time just to figure out, like, hey, I approach the world one way, you're going to approach it differently. We're going to agree on some stuff and not. But like, if I stop being curious about how someone else sees the world, I am scared of who I become.
Oh,
so
yeah.
let's not do that.
Yeah. And I think that, incredibly more so also with, I met my wife last year, and it was something where, everything kind of came together, but there's always, there's those little, 2 to 3% that, you may not agree at times. But I think it's one of those things that, you know, accepting and loving each other regardless of, that little difference here or there. And it may be, I forgot to do something in the kitchen, but, at the same point, I'm taking care of other things. She's taking care, it's one of those things where we can still kind of find that, that commonality where it's like, it's seeing past the little things to know the bigger thing is worth it. That's a long way for me to say I didn't do the dishes the other day.
For you to justify it. And I mean, I think that's like the telltale sign of whenever you aren't on the same page and you need to figure out how to reconnect is whenever the little things feel like big things, right? Yeah. Whenever you don't do the dishes and your wife walks in and she's like, how dare you not do the dishes? It's like, all right, if this is the reaction, what else, how we must be more disconnected than I realize. So how do we reconnect? Because the dishes aren't, I'm not saying the dishes aren't the problem. The dishes are part of the problem, but it's more the sign of like, oh, we must not be very connected because what I considered a little thing is a big thing to you. So we're not on the same page here. So how do I bridge this gap? You know?
And we're all different. I know we all, communicate differently in terms of like, sometimes she may not bring something up for a while. For me, it's one of those things that I'm kind of just, always checking in, and, I'm not sure if that's retriever behavior or not, but I'm just, I'm just kind of, myself as happy-go-lucky. And when it's like, hey, if I feel like there's a rift, I try to kind of like say like, hey, can I, you okay? And I feel like that's, it's my responsibility in some ways to kind of make sure that I can seek to understand. And then if it's someone's like, oh, hey, I didn't understand, like, I didn't think you wanted this. I did this because of this, or there's this other thing. And it's like, I feel like, can kind of quickly become something where you can kind of curb that behavior instead of like you're moving the Titanic at some point and trying to shift all of the, the conversation back, after, you've been separate for, in different atmospheres.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't know if it's naive or overly optimistic or golden retriever habits, but like, yeah, I go with the assumption of like, oh, you probably didn't, I don't believe you intentionally did this to hurt my feelings. So that's either like, we just need to talk more, or it's very neglectful. And then we especially need to talk more. Oh, yeah. So let's figure this out.
Yeah, certainly.
I also have, my wife and I, we've been married for 12 years. If we were dogs, I would be a golden retriever, definitely. And she would be a border collie, like always needs a task, always working, always running, always doing something. I'm just in the corner, probably making a mess and shedding everywhere, but being very lovable at the same time.
Oh, yeah. I can't shed obviously now anymore in terms of the hairs.
You already did shed. That's what happened. That's how you lost it. Yeah.
Maybe my summer coat will come in terms in terms of hair wise. It's one of those things that it's kind of, I had hair, but it was, do I go this route in terms of like kind of half having hair as COVID times, or do I just decide on one look? And this, I decided on this.
Yeah, that works. It's good.
Yeah,
you can cosplay Stone Cold Steve Austin now. And you couldn't before.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I've been waiting for the right character to fit me, and I'm hoping, if Steve Austin listens to this one day, still a chance he can come on my Steve's podcast. Yes. And we'll talk it over. I'm sure I'll make a spot check if he wants it, or we can go from there.
Yeah. Would you have a strong limit on if they are Steve or Steven, or is everyone who has a variation of Steve welcome on this non-existent hypothetical
That's
podcast?
A good question. So I actually kind of have a different camps of Steve versus Steven.
Okay.
The PHs I feel like are not true Steven, like Steves. I feel like, I'm a V. And I feel like the PHs are trying to be Vs, but they don't fully, they try to act cool as a V, but, it's more the biblical Stephen, it's kind of a different lane. And with this concept, I thought to, I've sent it to all my friends of all my dumb ideas that they're unfortunately subjected to have to deal with me.
I call it friendship.
Yeah. I mean, call it what you will, but the idea would be whether or not to also interview people who have acted as a Steve and then bring them in too to say, how did you feel you embodied, a Steve? And there's
Your
actually
Steveness.
and there's actually a great song of Steve called "Hey Steve," or from the band Hey Steve, called
Okay.
"I Am Steve." So I'm not sure. Again, everything's still pending. This is all an idea that I had
Okay. Yeah.
2 days ago. So, which is most of my dumb ideas.
Oh yeah. No, it's straight up like I have so many random ideas. Like, what if I did this one day? And I was like, all right, man, if this is still in your subconscious in 3 days, write it down. Do something with it. And surprise, surprise, most of those ideas don't last more than like 3 or 4 days.
Oh yeah. And I think that's where like Surfin' Bird kind of stuck enough where I'm like, I got to do this. And like, I won, I'm not trying. I figure I might as well bring them out, since.
If you got a trophy, you should show it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, and that's the thing. Actually, the first one that I won, I brought to my daughter's daycare, and I'd bring it to hot chicken restaurants, and Hot Chicken Week. I would make sure, for whatever reason, just to put it down on the counter, and it was just out of I don't know, ego or just lunacy. I went to Hot Chicken and Jorts Fest, and there's actually pictures of me. The last one is it Cadillac Ranch, or there's a place that used to be Paradise Park.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forget what it's called now. Yeah.
The last Paradise Park Hot Chicken and Jorts Fest, like I invited all my friends to come with me. I just won the 2018 trophy, and I didn't buy tickets to this event at all. I just showed up with the trophy and my friends. They let us in. I competed in a tater tot eating competition, and I danced most of the night with my trophy. And there's actually a few pictures where I'm throwing it like 3 feet in the air because no one else was dancing. So I just kind of dance and catch it and spin around. And so I think that's this one. So yeah, just complete lunacy again.
Yeah. When you bring those in, whenever you put them on the table, you should just say credentials.
Yeah.
And then just hand it to them.
Now I have like my thing was to have one for each hand. That's the having to win two. I got greedy. I was trying to go for a third too, just for the heck of it. But it's one of those things where I wanted to at least have one for each, and now I get to go to the parades and all that, and
that's fun.
I may show up coming up. We're talking right now to sell my hot chicken merch as well. So it's one of those things where I'm just trying to find different ways to make this fun and interesting and get the name. I call it the spread the word about the bird.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean that does make sense because like Conan O'Brien, all these ridiculous slapstick people, like they did create a character and then they were that character in public. So that almost sounds like for the bird, you're almost like, you know what? Here's a character. I cannot be this person every day, but I can be every once in a while, and it's a lot of fun. Here we go.
My wife wouldn't let me be this person every day. I think that's the main. Like, let's be honest. If again, it'd be the same thing as the Colbert of like, I have to go back outside and
come back in 10.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I've half thought of whether or not it'd be a fun mockumentary for Netflix of just like competing in hot chicken, almost like a Best in Show of all the people competing. I've seen some people several years. The one year they wouldn't let me compete between my 2018 and 2020. I went down to the hot chicken cooking competition dressed in full regalia of, gold chain, captain's hat, sunglasses, and then just taunted all of the hot chicken amateur competition people.
That's so WE.
It was completely unnecessary. And it's funny because, there's one that I sampled and she let me try. I went around to all the other tents. Like, you guys got to go home. You might as well just back. Like, she's winning it. It's not even close. Like, I'm sorry, guys. Maybe next year. And they all kind of were like, they were laughing because again, the character she won. And then, that's awesome. Funny enough, is that I show up in 2020, and they said, "Oh no, it's you again." In terms of I competed against them in 2018, saw them again in 2019, see them again in 20. They're like, they have. I think I've created PTSD for some people within the hot chicken world.
That's amazing. I've never thought that my presence could ever cause someone to be like, "Oh shit, he's here." So
I'm the Larry David of hot chicken. I feel like, or also
that's awesome. That's awesome. Tell us about like how long you've been doing that for. I know you have the two trophies, the chains, and all that. Tell us the story of Surfin' Bird and how it all got started.
Yeah, so Surfin' Bird, right here.
Yes.
So right now, what I'm doing is selling this as a spice mix. I actually started during COVID. I'm just going to set that down there. Started during COVID. I was like, hey, like, everything's up in the air anyways. Let's just go ahead and start a hot chicken business out of nothing.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, won the second trophy that year and decided in about October that year to start the whole thing rolling. Start a ghost kitchen. It seemed like everybody else was doing it. I was working my
Mhm.
corporate job at the same time as trying to make this get off the ground as well. A buddy and I have always kind of had that idea of like, oh, if you're ever to figure out something, if you're ever to make something work,
Yeah.
it's always been, I'm kind of a big watcher of markets. And, a lot of the time, like 2008 kind of happened. And then a lot of other smaller businesses at the time now became like Hattie B's, or I think there's like Gigi's
Yeah.
Cupcakes and a slew of others. So it was one of those things that like in a downturn, it really helps to like start something, see if it can become,
Yeah, of
as
course.
big as possible type of thing. It was, chaos and crazy. I think the first time we ended up trying to do this, we served it out of my kitchen and had folks, coming by to pick it up. And we had, all of us were trying to work different stations, complete lunacy. And again, testing my friendships, across the
Yes. Yep.
board. I guess people love me for some reason. I'm not sure. It could be like a Munchausen syndrome or something where they feel trapped. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. It's a little Stockholm in there also, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And so, and through that, again, I started, essentially trying to do this as a full time, like, let's open a hot chicken restaurant. But it just became very difficult to manage that as a fun side hobby while also, like, not a hobby. Obviously, I was trying to, form it as a business, but
Yes.
also working full time. And then unfortunately, there were issues where my wife and I at the time, just we weren't seeing eye to eye, and we had to essentially, go into a divorce. So that really kind of put Surf and Bird kind of in the back seat,
That
making
makes
sure
sense.
a lot of the time that my daughter was safe, making sure that she had the security that she needed. There's just
Mhm.
a lot of turmoil at the time,
Yes.
and I had at least brief stints where I was able to try to. I'm a big fan of the Phoenix. I actually have one on my side and of my only tattoos, and it's one of those things where I was like, I'll rebirth it, and I opened up at Five Spot. The owner there was, now fortunately had passed, but he was
Yeah.
so gracious to let us, open there for a little bit, try out some concepts and kind of get the bird going again. I made deep fried grilled cheeses, cover that,
Ooh, okay.
and or deep fried grilled cheese, deep fried uh, bologna sandwiches, just trying,
Yeah.
some different things besides obviously just chicken. And then it was something that like I kind of have a business model where I'm starting to form, aside from trying to do the chicken, just feeling at this age, I just don't want to be manning a deep fryer. Something about
No.
that of just, I think that,
Yeah.
not that I'm above it, but it's one of those things that,
I'm good.
yeah, I don't need to do this. But I
Yes.
thought, I can try to do this, which is really useful in terms of I can have a product that's shelf ready. I tried to seek the route of like, if I was to go ahead and make this myself, what would it take? And I will let you know there's a lot of government tape there of like, oh, okay, you need to, uh, I'm trying to remember, there's some national security measures. I'm trying to remember so it becomes a very um, complex process where I decided that's not where I want to go, but let me invest my time instead in seeking out a co-packer. Um, and that's where, again, kind of figuring out those baby steps to kind of get along the way. And I try to make it something where, folks can easily just make hot chicken at home. I tried to demystify it of, not making
Yeah.
it something where, oh, well, hot chicken's only in Nashville. I've had hot chicken, obviously, every state that I've ever traveled to. And I
Mhm.
try it and kind of get that, like, oh, well, I see that something's not quite right. And that's where I'm thinking that, more so with Surf and Bird, it's to kind of put this out in a national format. And there's some things coming, I can't talk about just yet, that's going to help get us to those levels and for a national footprint. Currently, I have it in 3 stores in Nashville. I know a lot of our listening audience is there, but I have it
Yep.
in Mitchell's. Everyone loves Mitchell's Deli.
Oh, yeah.
Roy's Meat Service. He was
Nice.
gracious enough to let me in there. Just trying to do a lot of cold calling and finding folks that are kind enough to let me have, borrow some shelf
Yeah.
space. There's also, I live here in Old Hickory, so actually right behind me, there's a place called Tennessee Liquidators, run by the Hambies, and they carry it there as well. And then also kind of popping up in different little markets here and there to, again, spread the word about the bird. So just try and find
Nice.
fun, cute little ways to do it. Um,
Yeah.
and folks can also, get it shipped. It comes in this neat little package. Of course, you'll get spice mix. But I also try to include some fun little things too.
Yeah.
Little sticker. Love a
Nice.
love a good sticker. Everyone loves a good sticker.
Yeah.
And then actually just got these made up, and they're on their way. So some guitar picks.
Guitar picks?
Yep.
Sweet.
So just
Nice.
little things where, it's fun little things that, I like
Yeah.
I don't know if I was supposed to be in branding and marketing. My current work has me in a lot of IT database analytics sort of work. But I always kind of have that eye for like somewhat of an aesthetic or a look. I really kind of honed more of a 90s vibe with Surfin' Bird. And it was something,
Yeah, it feels very 90s. Yeah.
I felt in 2020 that I was like, I feel like people kind of want that nostalgia. They want the feel of the 80s and 90s, and it's kind of been something that, especially like within our demographic, I feel that folks are kind of reaching back towards some of those comfort items, and I feel like it's something that Nashville hot chicken's always been red and white and black, and it's becomes very I feel like almost monotone of the culture of hot chicken. It becomes something where it's kind of monolithic of like, I go into any hot chicken place, it's red and white and black and yellow, red, and it's like trying to find a way to shake it up, add some colors, add some fun, have something that is attractive to people, to kids. The spice mix alone, this is not hot enough for my daughter. So it's one of those things that this is something where it's meant to be consumed by all, in terms of you just simply mix equal parts hot chicken cooking, like cooking oil of your choice. I don't want to get into, some folks might want coconut oil, some folks might avoid seed oils. I don't want any part of that. So I get out of that entirely. I don't, so it's just combine equal parts of cooking oil of your choice that's heated up to this. So it's half cup, and they just coat, if it's chicken, fish, tofu, fried cauliflower, whatever it may be. Or, I know plenty of folks that mix it up and put it on different things as well. So just lots of variety to it. I'm trying to showcase a lot of the versatility I made. If you check on my page right now, I have like a brown sugar salmon. I really like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
A pork tonkatsu. I have again, we kind of touched on, it'd be cool if we get some sponsors, but I'm working on I'm not sure when this will be aired, so hopefully I'll have that posted before then, but I have a Grillo's, Duke, and Surfin' Bird.
Ooh.
Was it a deep fried, like basically a deep fried pickle dip, or basically,
okay, yeah,
like I've seen enough recipes going around where it's okay, hey, like you basically make a base that is pickles and ranch and sour cream or Dukes, or kind of a combination of that, and you basically toast the breadcrumbs up, and I think just adding a little bit of Surfin' Bird seasoning to that, like the toasted breadcrumbs that kind of mimic that fried pickle sort of crunch, will be an interesting little take on it. So
nice.
So that's
awesome.
That's hopefully coming out here very, very soon.
Yeah, that's cool.
I just have to figure out all the video editing. I'm not one of those people. So if you guys know any of those,
yeah, dude, I'm not either. I feel like that's the fun of like trying to get something going. I'm currently a stay-at-home dad. Have been able to since like 2019. And like, I feel like it's really good to have a creative outlet, because sometimes our day-to-day life can be, I don't want to say numbing, but it's a different part of your brain.
Yeah.
So if you're doing data and IT stuff, like that's very different than a branding mindset. So it's probably healthy for you to have an outlet for your creativity. And like, that's why the podcast is so fun to be able to do, because it's like, all right, all day I'm talking to kids and doing kid stuff, and then I have at least an hour every once in a while in which I'm not a kid. Well, I'm still kid-like, but
are we your therapy, or we
I'm not sure which one is the therapy. That's always the question. This is where I feel like I actually know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it feels like this should be cathartic for you now, in terms of like, this is my only chance to get away. What's really going on, Devin?
Pretty much, yeah. No, it's the like, wait, okay, on my kids all day long, question everything I say. This guy seems like I sound like I know what I'm talking about. Okay, this is good. Okay, this is good.
I was going to say, in terms of like almost having too many creative places to go. I have self-taught. I think you may have saw like the little video I just decided to learn. Some of you got, I think someone, I'm not sure if it's you or someone else, posting the piano videos. So
yeah, that's me. I'm the one who does all those piano videos. Yeah.
I've been learning glockenspiel, which my wife really does not appreciate, which I feel like,
not a fan.
I don't understand why. I've even reduced it down to rubber mallets over the hard, wooden ones, but I've learned how to play, different little things on glockenspiel. I'm not skilled at all on piano, but I'm trying to learn little pieces here and there. But then I'm self-taught on guitar, self-taught on drums, and it's one of those things. I have all that downstairs in the basement, as well as, as we talked about, like cooking, running a small side hustle, you know, try to get into some other things like painting, anything to kind of like put the phone down. A lot of the time, what I personally like to do is I have, friends, over the 20 years I've been here in Nashville, that's like, I've had folks that, we try to singer songwrite and make a song, and
Yeah.
but I've kind of escaped that, and we would write lyrics and all that too. And my friends and I have a few songs that we put together that I'm really proud of. I think what I try to do more so nowadays is like, okay, like do my friends want to come over for an hour to 2 hours? We're gonna get nowhere at all, but just like play whatever you want to play. We'll all kind of cycle around to drums or piano or guitar or bass and just have fun. I feel like it's something as you get older, folks kind of like they want that product of. And I actually had the opportunity throughout COVID to play with someone who's in a nationally touring metal band, and he just played funk riffs for the most part, and you got to exercise a different bone for a while in terms of like just I feel like everyone kind of feels like they can get trapped into certain things, and it's one of those things that like to kind of get into a different groove that you may not necessarily find yourself in, and everyone kind of has that satisfying like, okay, yeah, we did that was fun. It may not be a product, but it's still something that like expresses yourself in different ways, and you can kind of find different ways. I don't like kind of that bro culture, but I do like the people that meet me in those sorts of ways where we can find different ways to connect.
It's so hard because like if I'm going to, I haven't done like an hour long jam session since like high school or something like that, maybe college also. But like the concept of especially being married and having kids, to be like, hey, I'm just gonna go to this guy's house for 2 hours. What are you gonna do? Mess around? Like just play some music for a bit. Okay, you're gonna like do anything with that? Nah. And I'm like, oh, I don't feel confident in saying any of that. I want there to be a product. I want there to be an end result.
Yeah.
And like that also then kills your creativity at the same time though, because you're like, but how do I turn this into something? And you're like, no. Figure out if you like it. Like just to jam with someone is not to have an end goal. It's just like, hey, how are we in the moment right now, and how can we gel together and live into that for a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing as we were kind of talking about, like, different people, coming together. It's the same thing with music. I feel like, I'm not sure what's been going on in somebody else's day or their life, or but you can kind of meet in those different places. One thing I tried to get going, and might try to get going here again, Old Hickory, now that the weather's getting a little better. We have obviously a like East Nashville and every other community. There's like a Facebook page everyone's part of.
Yeah.
We have a motorcycle gang. Well, not a gang. There's a group.
Social club.
Yeah,
there's a motorcycle social club.
Social club. Simpsons has a great episode on bikers versus bicyclists that if you're not familiar with, I highly recommend watching.
I haven't watched that one. I've watched a lot of Simpsons in my life, but not that one.
My daughter, thankfully enough, I think partly because of me, obsessed with Simpsons. So she's kind of helped where all my nieces now know and watch Simpsons at times as well, because she loves watching Simpsons with me, and then she's just like, hey Papa, can we put on Simpsons? And becomes that like that thing for us to kind of like meet together on. And there's the jokes that she may not get right now that I know build, but at least she can kind of like, she's a funny kid, she gets some of the timing through that. And she's somewhat of a Lisa Simpson.
Really? Does she play saxophone a lot?
No saxophone. I personally had no instruments in my home growing up. Okay. I actually bought my first guitar, which was supposed to be a Christmas present my parents said they were going to pay me back for. And my birthday's on Christmas.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So just a whole slew of, but in contrast, she has every instrument under the sun: piano, drums, guitar, bass.
That's cool.
Ukulele that she could play here, and doesn't have any interest at all. So
isn't that great as a parent? You're like, hey, I never had this opportunity as a kid. I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah.
And then your kid's like, I don't even vaguely care. And you're like, you're right. This was mostly self-projection.
Yeah.
And let's figure out what you want, because this is what I hoped you would want. Yeah. So what else you got, kid? Let's go.
Oh, yeah. And it's one of those things that, I found that, there was something that we kind of did acting wise that I was like, I feel like I don't want to be that parent. It's like, oh, well, she's an actor,
Yeah.
And in terms of like pushing that sort of motive on her, or be that sort of, theater dad sort of thing or whatever it is. But what we did was I said like, I'm throwing this away, and I would fake throw it away and kind of like palm it like a magic trick. And then she would kind of like break down in tears, like, Papa, why'd you? And then I like showed it to her, and then she was happy. And then she said, do it again. So like we would rehearse this like 7 or 8 times. She knew the outcome, but she wanted to like, get sad, like, figure out different
Play
ways to
into it.
play the sadness, different ways to play the happiness. And it's one of those things I was like, I see something there. And I think that's something that
That's cool.
I wish, in different ways that my parents, had that sort of interest. But it's, one of those things that I appreciate myself of like watching for those little things to kind of key in on, to know those currencies.
Yeah. No, I think like, I mean, I'm always fascinated just by like generational trends. So like our parents, I feel like were more focused on like, how do I create stability as much as possible for my family? So that's whatever the job is, work the job, get the money, do all of that. I think a lot of people's parents, or a lot of people I know as parents, don't have a lot of creative outlets to them. Whereas our generation is more like, all right, I know I got to make money, but also I really want a personality. I want a bigger personality than just someone who goes to work and comes home. So how do I do this? And then I feel like with most of our kids, I'm like, yo, how do we get to like, what makes you express yourself the most? And how do we tap into that? So I just watch it from, I think it's fascinating to pay attention.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Just the levels of actualization as we kind of, change and evolve, I'm not sure for the, like what better we're like, it's kind of one of those things. I'm curious what the next, steps will be, to your same point. Cause it's like, I've come from, a family where, very blue collar. We've had, a lot of different moves, from year to year. And it's one of those things to provide my daughter that ability where it's like, other than, the unfortunateness of, the splitting my ex-wife and I had with her.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the same home in Old Hickory for the past 3 years. She's 7. And it's something where, I tried to be that, that all encompassing rock for her. Especially after, we touched on that earlier, but, when she lost her mom, just, she unfortunately had passed away. And it's one of those things like providing just that stability.
Yeah.
And kind of
being her person.
Yeah. And I think especially too here in Old Hickory, there's such a sense of community. There's so many people that just know her and, and she runs between different houses. I feel like I live in the 1990s all over again. Just like the hominess of kids are just riding the bikes and there's a whole big library across the street. And then there's a big parking lot. I feel like I should be a billboard for Old Hickory of just like the quaintness of all this.
Come out here.
Yeah. It's kind of like a really well kept secret where after living in East Nashville for about 13 years, I was like, this, and all my friends that come here are like, I would trade. And it's one of those things that, I kind of just ended up in the right spot at the right time. And, I, just like, I think it's one of those things that I always tried to see or appreciate the now, where I find myself now and where, I've been to now is I've been a different road or difficult road at different times, but, I really appreciate being here and, what I've created here. And then bringing in my wife last year, we were married, November 11th. We dated, we joked, for about 2 weeks. It feels like we met back in July of last year and we dated for about 2 weeks until I started to say like, I'm starting to move stuff around in my basement. If you need to start moving your house over here at some point, just feeling like, we knew this was coming, which was one of those things that we didn't, both of us had very, we're very strong people, in terms of personality, in terms of will. Her family came here from Poland and my family came here from New York, where it feels like, oddly enough, both of the families landing here, it was my 40th birthday this year over Christmas. And it was just nice that we have, though we don't have like our extended families here, it's almost as if, our two families, coming together, really bring that stability for my daughter. She's actually, right now, she's right now over at Babcha, essentially wife's mother came by to pick her up with my niece or her niece, but essentially my niece now too. They're all over there for sleepover, last day of school type of thing. So sweet. It's all, it's one of those things that like, I can't imagine or couldn't have imagined, life would be this sweet. And to get to, say that to my wife every day is just one of those things where, like I'm choking up a little bit now, just like how good the moments are, and knowing, all the path that I've had to get to here is worth it.
Now, tell me your timeline a little bit, because that sounds like you've had an insane, like 3 years or something like that. So you got divorced, your ex-wife passed away, and then you met a new woman and now you're married. What's the time span there? Like if it's not too personal details to ask.
No, I mean, and that's fine. So we were separated Actually, we started our divorce around 2021. It ended in 2022. Openly, it was I think it was 4/19/2022. And the only reason I
Okay.
remember that is I had a 4/20 divorce party at the same place that we all got together in uh, for my then wedding at the time. So we kind of just recouped all the
That's
groomsmen and had a
funny.
good laugh and gathered. And then
Look where we are now.
yeah, it's like it's one of those things where and I had a cheers that was to hell, and oddly enough,
Yeah.
we had it was just one of those things that we all would cheer our glasses. I don't know where it came from. I just wanted to do it, and then someone who was new to that group essentially had responded with like, "Oh, that's actually like a an Irish cheers thing. It's like to hell, like may the road to get there be as fun as the reason the way we got here type of
Yeah.
some roundabout sort of I'm German, French, Irish, Lebanese, and Syrian, so
Yeah.
there's lots of different
Yep.
ways where I'm sure these phrases go together better than I'm saying them. Uh, and then it's one of those things where I end up in the dating pool, didn't want to be in the dating pool. It is crazy. Didn't want to,
Yeah.
don't want to ever, find myself in Nashville, bachelorette capital of the world, just the chaos that it
Yeah.
is. Trying to, understand, where again with Nashville being the city it is, it's very transient. People,
Yes. Very much so.
are you know, they don't see that sort of same connection. And my wife and I both being in Nashville for, I believe for her it's about 30 years, for me about 20. So we're kind of the OGs of Nashville. I feel like we've seen all the ebbs and flows of Nashville. And it's one of those things that there's, I think, a steadiness that we both have where, when we met back in July, it was something where, like we saw that in each other where it's like, we know who we are. We don't hide who we
Yeah.
are. And I think
Yep.
that's the thing that I always tell her that I love most is just like, it's something where, there's not this, I've always been me, no matter who I've, all the walks of life I've had. It's always been, if I'm in college, with buddies, I've still been guys like, this is kind of stupid. Seeing all the stuff going on, like, I kind of have that
Yes.
sense of realism or base I have almost as if it's a Carlin-esque sort of voice, I would say, of just like the absurdity of, a situation or what have you. Uh, but just like, in still like a grounded sort of way. But then, still being caring, loving at heart, and enjoying those like small moments. So again, that was in 2023, July. What year are we in now? So
25?
I apologize. I'm going to rewind again.
No, you're good, man. Yeah.
So, my ex-wife had passed away in June 23rd, 2023. It was somewhat sudden, but somewhat expected I knew that she battled, substances, and it was something where I tried to make sure her family, especially while, we were still married at the time, tried to help her in ways, but it was kind of met with a silence and, just assuming that like, oh, well, she tells us everything's okay. And it's one
I
of those,
gotcha. Yeah.
it was unfortunate because it's one of those things that like, you know, you never know who you can kind of help by, saying something and kind of having tough conversations. But ultimately, she did pass away in June 23rd. Um, and she was an avid rower, prior to, so she actually, was near collegiate level, or not near collegiate, but near Olympic level. And
Okay.
what I tried to do to honor that was, when I broke the news to my daughter, we went out to out to our nearby lake over here in Old Hickory, and I took my canoe out there with her, and we've done this, a few times before, but kind of broke the news to her and just had that like that shattering in my heart of just
Yeah.
her finding that
Yeah.
information out, and I tried to do it on the
Mhm.
water so that way it felt it's connected in some way
Connected
for
to
her.
her. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
but
get
again,
that.
it was something where I just couldn't, like I also have, I'm not sure if it's masochism, I say this in a joking
Mhm.
sort of way, but I actually like brought my phone, I brought my phone with me, of course, as everyone kind of brings their phones with them nowadays, but I hit record just that way. If there's ever a time that like I feel lost or, disconnected with, where we're at, I have that recording somewhere. I need to seek it back out again, but you know, it, if I need to seek that recording back out to hear that heartbreak and that, like, just to almost give myself a shock or a jolt, back to that moment of like, when she found out and when I found out, and in terms of, like, to help like center us in the moments that we're in.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's
Sense of purpose.
sadly when you go through hard things and then like I think our brain, like, I mean, I think any woman would tell you that like they forget what giving birth was like because their brain makes them forget about how hard and how painful it was. And like, I mean, I also, I mean, I grew up on the same comedy as you. And one of the main attractions of George Carlin and a lot of those guys is they would be so bluntly honest and say such harsh truths that it woke you up.
Yeah.
And that's the way I know how to phrase it. It's like, all right, man, if you're ever like, I need to wake up, I need to remember what me and my daughter have been through and the connection that we have. All right, this is what I can do. I can listen to this and be like, hey, man, you and your daughter have seen some shit together and you've gone through it together. And this is a way to remind yourself of how low you've gone and how much you've built up from there.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, I can't remember if it was that. It was pretty soon after that. We had almost this running joke from, oddly enough, Crystal's, the little sandwich if you remember them.
Is Crystal's even still around?
They are still in business. Very few of them. But they made a hot chicken sandwich, and maybe a year or so prior to that, they had a sandwich, and we recorded a video and sent it to Crystal's. And they didn't put pickles on there. And we said that was nonsense. So we became pickles.
That is nonsense.
We became pickles and nonsense. She's pickles, awesome. And I'm the nonsense. So
and you're the nonsense. Yeah.
So I made up that like we need a good, like after that had happened, I pretty soon after kind of came up with like, we need a good team name, and like what's our in terms of like what's our team, and it helped find a little joking like hey cool. Pickles, hey it's just like
sweet.
We're good battle buddies, and it's one of those things that like I always kind of have, and I'm sure you have the same with your kids as well, but trying to like know that there's that legacy that I'm putting out into the world of her, where like I want her to project though she's seen a lot, knowing that like the way she approaches people is with such kindness and warmth. My wife the other day tried to say, oh well, why do you like me? Like I tell you to clean your room, I tell you to do this, I tell you to do that, I'm bossy. And she's, she, said to her, like, don't say those things about yourself. And it was just like a, like, I love so much that like, that's where her heart is that like, she doesn't want to hear her, as her new mom, say things about herself that, are trying to slight herself in any way. It's, that she loves her no matter what.
Yeah. No, I think, a lot of kids do like affirmations nowadays, or a lot of parents are having their kids do affirmations, and it's like, you, your actions define your character, but also you define your character a lot as a person. And just being aware of your own self-talk is so freaking hard. And whenever we were kids, no one asked you about your self-talk.
Oh yeah.
No one looked at you and said, hey man, who are you telling yourself you are? Like, how are you treating yourself today? It was always like, how are you treating other people? Not like, but how are you treating yourself? And not like treat yourself, but like, hey man, have you dug yourself into a hole and you are not letting yourself get out of it, and you're so focused on making other people happy that you won't even acknowledge you've dug yourself into a hole?
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Oh yeah.
You don't need to do that. You're okay.
And even my wife, when we first had met, she had heard, a lot of the time I would say like, like I'm done. Like I would kind of throw out little things, and it wasn't trying to look for that validation back. Like, oh, you're not, but she, she wouldn't like just say that. She would just say like, I'm not like, I wouldn't date anyone, or, I wouldn't marry anyone who, like I thought was a loser, or that, thinks they're dumb, or it's one of those things that like, the bluntness that she has and the bluntness that I have from being from New York, it works so well. Of like,
that's cool.
We don't let ourselves settle for less, and, define each other and all that we have. Again, we met in July. I apologize. I rewound to come back.
Yeah, you're good.
We had met in July, had that very quick. I think we need to, we need to see this through, and, somehow had, thrown together a wedding in November 11th, which oddly enough is Polish Independence Day, but also
and Veterans Day
also, and Veterans Day. So my daughter was off. It was just a happenstance of like, November 11th. Let's just shoot for that. And November 11th also, more so, kind of like 11/11 kind of has a lot of spiritual meanings and stuff as well.
Yeah.
I think one of our first, like dates that really kind of connected us was, there's a little yoga studio here. Shout out to Southern Crystal Yoga Company, that they have these full moon ceremonies, and it's something where we just went out to, I usually just go out to their yoga classes, and the ladies there, they're very sweet. And they had one that was a full moon ceremony. And then afterwards I took my wife to, like, and there's just like a glow I felt about both of us, even like right after that. And I was like, hey, you want to go grab Sonic, and we'll just go out to like this little, beach cove area that we have out here in Old Hickory, where you kind of watch the waves come in and, sit on top of the Jeep. And it was just, kind of that, like, we can just sit here. And I can't remember if there was just one of the specific, songs that kind of hit was like, will you lie with me? And, just look at the world.
You mean Snow Patrol?
Yeah. Yeah, I may
Chasing Cars.
Yeah, I may be misremember if it was Snow Patrol or another song.
It's okay.
Or no, it was the one like, will you walk with me into the dark?
You mean I Will Follow You Into the Dark by Death Cab for Cutie?
There you go. I apologize.
Yeah,
and it was just
you're good.
It was just that feeling of like, as dark and as dark as it was, there at the water, the middle of the night. It was just that like feeling of we're connected.
Yeah.
Which was also interrupted by the funniness of like a guy who was listening to death metal to the side of us, and how like I had my New Yorker sense of like, oh, this guy, like, can't you understand?
Hey,
like,
this guy over here.
But she found, the humor in it of just,
that's awesome.
That it is just that like juxtaposition where like, I love that we point out things to each other.
That's awesome. So I'll probably start wrapping it down. How we end every episode is we ask every guest a series of 5 questions. So question number 1, did you have any backup names for your daughter? Like any names you almost named your daughter?
No.
Okay.
We sadly, and like, I guess not, is that we, prior to her being born, we had a lot of time that we had spent in the hospital. Just my wife at the time had a lot of episodes where she'd stopped breathing, and we, I didn't know if she was going to make it or not. And, it was kind of one of those things that, we just had a lot of discussion, and, it was one of those things that we tried to honor her mom by naming her Carol. Her mom's name was Carol, so Caroline. And then, of course, being national parents, it was, well, what would be a good country Taylor Swift name? So it's Caroline Cumberland if she ever decides to be famous or in some sort of singing career, or if she decides to be a softball player, she'd be CC Younes. So,
yeah, that's good. Well, that's awesome. I do also want to say that, like, it seems like, I mean, it would probably be a whole other discussion that isn't usually what you do on the first date of meeting someone. It seems like you have found or seen a lot of darkness through your days.
Yeah.
And had a lot of really pretty blunt conversations in which you're like, yo, didn't know if you were going to die or not. Let's talk about some stuff.
Yeah.
So way to still see the light, man. Way to still have like hope in life, basically. Because I can tell that you've definitely been through some stuff where you've been like, how do I come out of this one?
Yeah. Well, it's something where, I'm sorry, was there a question there?
No, I'm just commenting.
Okay.
That's just like observation. It's just observation of like you being like, oh, when I thought my wife was going to die from this. And it's like, you still have light to you and you've clearly seen some shit.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're still able to see the light, man. It's seeing the light is hard sometimes.
Oh yeah, certainly. It's one of those things that like seeing the light in, kids or strangers and, neighbors around here or anything else. It's one of those things that like, the little moments I enjoy of just like, everything getting underneath people's skin. We live in a time where everything's, easily, nitpicked and, can be criticized in one way or the other. But it's one of those things where it's like, or I could just choose to be happy. It's hard to do, against some of the odds, but, I find some ways.
Yeah, you find the light, and that's good.
And I think in, again, a cringy sort of way, my favorite band is Nickelback, or one of my favorite bands. I've actually asked all my friends, and everybody has heard this so many times, that I do need to probably cement it into some legal documents. I do want a almost Nickelback themed funeral where somebody will have to read during my eulogy, somehow, some way, we're going to make it all right, but not right now. I'm just in a very somber sort of tone, but, to that same sort of sense of like, somehow, some way, they'll make it all right, but not right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I hope every eulogy starts with, this is how you remind me.
Yeah, this is how you remind me.
I hope whenever there's a slideshow, it goes, here, look at this photograph.
Oh, yeah.
There's just so many good opportunities.
It's really untouched territory, honestly. I feel like
the Nickelback funeral industry.
If I need to, like, I really don't want to have side of a bullet, be something that takes me out.
Yeah.
But, if it was, it'd be apropos.
That's awesome. Okay. Next question. Thanks for doing a sidebar. Next question. Do you have a favorite TV dad?
I'm between Al Bundy and Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
I like the affableness of Homer Simpson. I think my daughter and I connect more so with him in terms of just this, like, kind of happy-go-lucky dad, somewhat, flawed in ways, but loving in others, and, knowingly and unknowingly trying, and, just kind of that sort of sense. I apologize. There's another airplane flying.
Big old plane. You're good.
Big old plane. But just like that sort of sense of, like, thankfully do have enough education behind me that I could make smart decisions. But sometimes it's fun to, one of the things we did that annoyed my wife thoroughly, which I completely understand why, was I drew a red mouth around my stomach, around my belly button, and then 2 eyes and a nose, and then did that to my niece and my daughter, to which then they decided to do the same things. And then we all went up while my wife was working to jiggle our bellies with our faces that are drawn on there, which she was not very happy about.
No, didn't go over so well.
Didn't go over so well. But, for me, it was one of those things I was like, this will be great.
Yeah. Well, you created a memory. Not all memories are good ones.
Yeah. Well, that, and it took everybody a while to wash their bellies off.
Yeah, of course.
I think it was at least a week and a half. My marker was maybe a little stronger than I thought.
Yeah. Yep. That'll happen.
Yeah,
it's all in good fun.
That's what happens with Sharpies.
It does. Next question. Do you have a go-to replacement curse word, or do you just say the curse word?
I'm from New York. It's really hard to avoid just saying the curse word.
That's what I figured.
It's one of those things that, I think it's one of those things that I don't, like, my daughter doesn't use curse words. She does say the word stupid and I don't know if I should be saying this. She is better than I am. Is ultimately what it comes out to, is, but at the same thing, I don't have I would say a thing where I would discourage her thoroughly, but I would also say, as she kind of matures in language, that's like knowing a time and a place. It's like, hey, like, you're amongst us, and it's like, you jab your toe. It's like, yeah, who can't not want to? Yeah. But at the same point, I actually was supposed to be a teacher. So before I kind of went down the data and analytics path, I was going to be a high school business teacher until I decided it's way too much stress. It's something that somehow then I had complete control of my vocabulary at all times in my 20s. Yeah. I don't know what's happened since. Stress?
Maybe.
Yeah, could be.
Maybe.
I don't know what happened.
Maybe whenever you're a teacher, also the performance review and is all, I'm sure, would come up badly if you're dropping F-bombs in class all the time.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Next question. Do you have a favorite kids' toy or activity, or one of your favorite things to do with your daughter besides making fake faces on your stomach with permanent marker?
I mean, that's definitely up there. My daughter, actually asked to play catch with me. It's something that, so it's one of those things where, we kind of, wrestle or play around type of stuff too. It's one of those things where, I only have one child, and it's one of those things where, I don't want her to have, though she is very, very girly, wants to dress up. Actually had a whole Taylor Swift themed birthday party. Nice. It's one of those things I don't let her get away from, almost treating her as a boy in some ways, wrestling and playing around, throwing pillows. So it's kind of, again, that sort of mix of, play and, hijinks, if you will.
That's awesome.
I'm trying to think of anything beyond balls, but yeah, I mean, typically my daughter and I ride bikes to school whenever possible, here in Old Hickory. So it's one of those things that we ride bikes whenever we can down to the elementary and back. And, just little things like that, where it's it makes that memory until she gets to that point where it's I don't want to see dad riding a bike with me.
Yep.
I'm trying to, I go to lunches with her whenever possible. So it's trying to take advantage of those opportunities before it becomes a thing where it's I don't need you here.
Yep. I think my mom's always said that about grandkids, of where she's there's going to be a day in which they don't want to hang out with me anymore. So if there's still a chance in which they want to hang out with me, I'm going to do everything I can to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And it always reminds me hey man, your kids are okay with being around you right now. And 2 years from now, you don't even a year from now, you don't know that.
Well, and that's something that when my daughter was first born, I had, little kid and trying to think that it's again, to put myself in the now, it's trying to think of, at that point when she was that small, I was she's only going to be like this right now. And another year, she's going to be a completely different person. Another year, she's going to be completely different. And trying to have that perspective of like having that immediacy, having that like that sense of like, taking ownership or taking in that moment instead of just going like, and to that point, like we talked about earlier, it could be easy to lose track of things and kind of go, take every day as, another day. But I think trying to find a way to bring that, that immediacy back helps.
Yeah, no, I think every single day you kind of are like scarcity is a fascinating thing because to me that's scarcity. Like, hey, your kid's only going to be 1 month for 1 month of their entire existence.
Yeah.
That's scarcity. But most of our lives are told of scarcity of like so many other things. And I'm like, but this is the scarcity that matters.
Yeah, yeah.
Because this is precious.
Yeah.
And like other stuff is like, ran out of chips today. That's fine. I'll go buy some more.
Yeah, yeah.
But like the scarcity of how your kids are only this little once is just something that like is really, it can feel overwhelming to be in tune with all the time.
Oh yeah. And kind of related, but unrelated, I guess, in different ways. But so I actually recently lost my job, and it's something where like, I have a severance. I'm actually, thankfully, covered. Having the ability, like through the summer, to get to spend, time with her, and throughout the days, and especially like having the nieces and nephews, certainly helps out. Where we can all get together, find times that I can take them all to the house and kind of have those times and those memories together. Is something that like I want to be more intentional about trying to and make that with the new family I have with my nephew and niece on the other side, as well as and trying to. We've only been a family for 9 months or so in terms of both sides, but it feels like at times it's been 20 years and how everybody interacts. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Last question is best parenting advice you've received. I also have backup ones. This one kind of stumps people sometimes. Yeah. So if you're like, I got nothing, I can hit you another one also. Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure I can come up with the response. In terms of, there's always so let me say this in terms of the environment I grew up in was not one that I would probably say was, they tried very hard in terms of like, having the upbringing that we did to kind of stabilize things. But I think for me, it wasn't someone giving me advice when I had a kid. It was the role models and the people that I watched growing up. My uncle, my grandfather, like my two uncles, and my grandfather were huge influences to me as far as, what I made as the building blocks of, a father, a man, and how I treat, my wife, how I treat my daughter, how I treat others, how hard I work, how, I enjoy the little things. My grandfather, I just told I was chatting with my wife today, they didn't splurge on things. They kind of lived a humble life. My grandfather was a truck driver, and it was something where he didn't, they were just fine with like the day in, day out. And, and it's one of those things where, we, my wife, we have the ability if we want to travel, do things, but, her willingness to like enjoy here and where we're at, instead of trying to look for new, which has always kind of been my mindset. Like, oh, I got to reach and search and find and actualize. And then for her, it's just like, you can actualize here. Like, you don't need all these other people, places, things to become a better, bigger, bigger you, other than like you reaching inside yourself. My uncle Joey would, often take me out fishing, and just that, like, again, all the jokes that we tell at the dinner table with my, my grandma, my uncle, and my grandfather around, were just, we'd sit around a table and, she'd make tea, and we just kind of, crack jokes, and just that, like, that sort of behavior became, ingrained in me of like, that's cool. There could be bad days, but we'll still find little things to be like, oh yeah, find the jokes in there. And then recently I'm bringing my daughter back home to upstate New York, the times that, I've actually soon after my ex-wife's passing, bringing her back to essentially my uncle's house where we stayed. He was just doing the little things like brushing his teeth with my daughter, but it was one of those things that, like, just how good of a dad he is, and how, like, even as a grandfather now, just, how his willingness of just being, goofy and silly and approachable, and, loving, and love him no matter, like, I was going to say, in terms of like, probably one of his phrases would be like, love him no matter what, type of thing. Uncle Brian just being very, very centered and grounded. And, and that was the three of them, I felt like, always kind of formed my conceptions of, a father as of a man, knowing that, like, I saw that my life was not always, these stable building blocks to kind of form that, but trying to say, like, but if there was somebody, and seeing those models or those pillars as, well, when I become a dad, I'm going to do, and not trying to do it out of spite, but do it out of example and say, I saw how to do this. And then how do I want to act? It doesn't mean that I'm perfect all times, but I was trying to be like, using those sort of examples to, know how to structure myself and ground myself.
Yeah. I think about that with like creative stuff a lot, because it's really easy to get in your own head and be like, I would write this song, but I don't have this type of guitar, so I shouldn't write this song. I can do this, but I don't have this. So until I get this, I can't do it. And it's like, dude, you have a guitar right back there. Just go try.
Yeah.
Just go see what happens. And like, you'll be fine. And it is just weird because it's not like, you can say it like in a very like not very nice tone to yourself of like, oh, you should enjoy what you have. But it's like, hey, actually, you have more access to the life you think it was within reach than you might realize. And how can you get more in tune with that?
Certainly. And I think that there's a thing where we want to assume like, oh, if I get this, life will be better. If I get that,
absolutely.
And I think that, it's one of those things, if you compare life today to life, 20, 30 years ago, like Amazon can get you anything you need in, no time, the ability to like do most any, if it's music and you want to program something on your laptop or what have you, or, GarageBand, whatever it may be. There's so many options nowadays for folks where, the accessibility is less the issue. And it's just, the wanting, or the materials. And it's like, I feel like, again, to that point that we made earlier about kids, where it's like, where they're going to go versus like our generations and kind of moving on up. It's one of those things where like, I've always kind of looked for a zeitgeist, and I'm trying to figure out what that zeitgeist that's going to pull this generation, through that, I kind of felt like, we kind of had similar sort of ones as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, only other thing, Steve, is just a moment for self-promotion. So if we want to get some hot chicken spices, how do we find you on Instagram? Like, how do we follow you? All that.
All that good stuff. Yeah. So you can find me on Surfin' Bird Hot Chicken on Instagram. So you should see some logo or some lettering similar to that. Again, I sell my hot chicken spice mix. It's one of those things where I have currently I sell it, online. You can go and find me, find the link on my Instagram. I also have a Shopify page that you can find, but typically easier if you go through my Instagram. And, find me at flea markets, find me around Nashville. There's some deals coming up here soon where hopefully you're going to start seeing me in some restaurants here, not just in Nashville, but, elsewhere, in other states as well. So looking to go ahead and get that going as well. And, hopefully, my thing is to spread the word about the bird and to have something that, it's like the Sweet Baby Ray's of hot chicken. You're going to, be able to access it, elsewhere. I think it's one of those things where, even in Nashville, even last night, I went out somewhere to have hot chicken, and it was just the flavor profile wasn't quite there. And I think it's one of those things that, to kind of have something that could be out to the masses. And
Yep. Yes. You're not suddenly opening up like restaurants in like downtown Vegas and all these other spots for some reason. Yes. Yeah. Yes. You're a different type of hot chicken dad. Yes. Yep. And your 2 trophies are there to prove it. As it's getting darker, yes. We have to end the episode just for your safety. It's not for any other reason. We could, yes. Yes. But yeah, man, that's what I got. I'm going to go see what chaos my wife and the 3 kids have gotten into upstairs. And thanks for reaching out to be on an episode. And thanks for supporting us. Thanks for following us. And really appreciate your time. Yeah, man, of course. See you next time, Steve. Bye. Thank you for listening to the episode.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Imperfect Dads Podcast.
And make sure to subscribe and rate us 5 stars wherever you listen to us.
The music is provided by the Wildfeathers.
And all episodes are produced and edited by me.
Make sure to tune in Mondays for new episodes.